Leave now. Don't say a word to your son. That was the text that hit my phone at 6:42 on a Saturday night, right when my 5-year-old grandson was showing me a drawing of his late grandma. If you're watching this, you already know my name's Sam Booker, and that message, it tore open everything I thought I still had left. They thought they were about to humiliate a tired old man. They didn't know they were sitting inside his restaurant drinking his wine under a roof he built with his own hands. Before we dive in, do me one thing. Hit like, subscribe, and tell me down in the comments where you first heard my story. I've seen it travel through whispers, through screens, through people who said, "You gotta hear what this man did." Well, tonight, you're gonna hear it from me. The whole truth. The night I stopped being a grieving widower and became the lesson they'll never forget. Now, let me take you back to the Ember Lounge and the message that started it all. They say grief softens over time. That's a lie. It just learns to sit quieter in the corner while life pretends to go on. Saturday night, the Ember Lounge. Atlanta's kind of fancy velvet booths, low jazz, a place where folks come to be seen. I hadn't been there since Gloria passed 8 months ago. My son Marcus said it was Vanessa's idea. A family dinner, he told me. The kids miss you. When I walked in, I saw them before they saw me, my 3 grandbabies laughing over a tablet, their joy so bright it cut right through the ache that had lived in my chest since the funeral. Then my phone buzzed. One text, 7 words, "Leave now. Don't say a word to your son." I stared at it like it was a snake on my palm. The number wasn't saved, but I knew who sent it. David Ortiz. The man who's been running my restaurants for a decade. He doesn't text unless something's burning. I slipped the phone into my pocket, forced a smile, and sat down. Vanessa looked up at me with that polished smile of hers, the kind that shows teeth but not warmth. "Sam," she said, brushing imaginary lint off her silk dress. "You made it." "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, though part of me already wanted to. Vanessa had chosen the most visible table in the place center floor spotlight overhead where everyone could watch us. That woman never did anything by accident. Her parents, Harold and Elaine, sat across from me, dripping money and quiet judgment. Marcus, my boy, looked tired. The kids, though, Jade and Amira. Little Noah, they ran to me like sunlight breaking through clouds. Grandpa Sam Noah jumped into my arms. His laughter felt like oxygen. "Hey, champ," I said, kissing the top of his head. "You been good to your mama?" Vanessa's smile tightened. "They've been wonderful," she said, her tone smooth but sharp. "We've just been adjusting." Adjusting. That word hit like a cough drop. You don't want sweet on the outside, bitter when it melts. They'd been adjusting ever since Gloria died. Adjusting to a life where I wasn't part of Sunday dinners, birthdays, or bedtime stories. The waiter, young woman named Kendra, came by with menus. When our eyes met, she froze for half a second. Recognition. I'd hired her cousin to paint one of my construction sites 2 summers ago. She nodded quietly and whispered, "Good to see you again, Mr. Booker." Vanessa caught it. "You know her small world," I said, unfolding the napkin. Harold lifted the wine list, his gold cufflinks flashing under the dim light. "Let's get something nice tonight." "Sam's treating right." He said it like he was testing my reaction. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, you don't have to." "It's fine," I said. "Let them pick what they want." It wasn't about the wine. It was about control. Harold wanted to see if the old man with calloused hands could still keep up. I'd seen that look 100 times in my life, from bankers, from developers, from men who'd never worked a day outside air conditioning. Vanessa leaned forward, that diamond ring of hers catching the candlelight. "Sam, before the food comes, we thought this would be a good time to talk about the kids' future." Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. Their future. She smiled, polite, rehearsed. Yes. Boundaries, expectations, family roles. I looked around the table. The laughter of my grandkids faded into the low hum of the restaurant. Gloria used to love nights like this, a good meal, live music, family close. For a second, I saw her reflection in the wine glass across from me, the woman who'd stood by me through 35 years of building, scraping, saving. And now here I was, sitting in the middle of everything we'd built, feeling like a guest at my own funeral.
That's when Vanessa placed her hand flat on the table and said, calm and cold, "Sam, we need to talk about boundaries." The words hung in the air like a gavel hitting wood. A trial was about to begin. The music in the Ember Lounge was soft that night, a saxophone moaning somewhere near the bar.
But I swear every word Vanessa spoke carried sharper than brass. She leaned back in her chair, posture perfect, voice calm, the kind of calm you hear before a storm. "Sam," she began, "we've all been thinking about how to make things smoother for everyone." Harold nodded beside her, his Rolex catching the light like a little sun. Elaine sipped her wine, lips pursed in polite concern. They looked like a panel of judges from some lifestyle magazine, the kind that praises grace under pressure while quietly tearing folks apart. Marcus, my boy, sat at the end of the table stirring his water. He hadn't met my eyes once. I felt that text burning in my pocket. "Leave now," David had warned me, but I stayed because leaving would have meant surrendering. Vanessa smiled the way people do when they're about to say something cruel but want credit for being gentle.
"You've been through so much this year. Losing Gloria, it's understandable that you're still, well, struggling."
Struggling, I repeated, my voice low. Emotionally, financially, spiritually, maybe, she added, her tone syrupy and insincere. "You've always been so proud, Sam, always insisting you're fine. But the truth is, we're worried," Harold chimed in, pretending to examine the wine glass. "At your age, it's normal for things to start slowing down. The body, the business, the mind." I kept my face steady. Years on construction sites taught me how to stand tall in the middle of a storm. Wind, noise, insults, all of it. Elaine leaned forward now, voice soft as silk. "We know the medical bills for Gloria's treatments must have been extensive. That kind of strain can take a toll, especially on someone who works with his hands." She said hands like it was a dirty word. I looked at my palms, scarred, rough, proud. Hands that built homes, hospitals, bridges, the kind of things that outlast people. Vanessa glanced at Marcus, then back at me. "Dad," she said, using the word like a formality, "Marcus and I just want to make sure the kids have stability, consistency, the kind of environment that promotes growth." "Growth," I said. "They're growing fine. You should see Jaden's report cards." "That's not what I mean," she said quickly. "I mean exposure, experiences, opportunities. We were talking to my parents about private schools. Amira's at the age where language immersion could really benefit her. Noah could start early in a STEM program." I nodded slowly. "And where do I fit in?" Elaine smiled, a smile dipped in poison. "That's exactly what we wanted to talk about." The waiter. Kendra appeared just then, saving me for a moment. She placed the wine bottle down gently. Her hands trembled slightly. "Here you go, folks. 2015 Cabernet House Reserve."
She looked at me, just for a heartbeat, her eyes saying, "Hang in there, Mr. Booker." "Thank you, Kendra," I said quietly.
Vanessa didn't miss a beat. "Lovely girl," she said once Kendra left. "She's probably thrilled to have this job. Places like this give people a chance to be part of something nicer than their usual." The condescension was so smooth, it almost sounded kind. Almost. Harold lifted his glass. "You've got to admit, Sam, not everyone's cut out for luxury. Takes a certain kind of upbringing to really handle it." "I manage just fine," I said. "Of course," Elaine said quickly, "in that way people do when they don't mean it. But you're still living in that little rental, right? The one on Peachtree." I nodded once. Harold chuckled softly. "Most men your age are enjoying retirement by now, fishing, golfing. Not still out there pouring concrete or chasing contracts." "I like working," I said. He leaned forward. "You like it, or you have to." That one hit deeper than I expected. For a second I saw Gloria, her headscarf tied tight during chemo, her smile saying, "Keep going, Sam, we'll be fine." She'd never doubted me, not once. Vanessa cleared her throat, pulling me back. "We're just saying maybe it's time you accepted a little help. For everyone's sake." Marcus looked up, then eyes darting between us. "Vanessa," he said softly, but she cut him off. "No, Marcus. He needs to hear this. We've been patient, we've been supportive, but the kids are starting to notice things. Notice what I asked. They ask why Grandpa lives in a small house when Grandma and Grandpa Price have a pool, why you drive an old truck instead of something safer, why you don't come on our vacations. They're children. Sam, they see the difference." Her words were like sandpaper, slow and scraping. "You're saying I'm a bad influence. I'm saying they need role models who represent success," she said. "And right now, that's not you." The air left the table. Even the music seemed to fade. Kendra reappeared with bread and plates, her face pale. She set everything down carefully, avoiding eye contact with Vanessa. "Everything okay here?" she whispered to me. "Just family talk," I said quietly. She nodded but didn't move right away. There was a flicker of something protective in her eyes, like she wanted to stay. Then Vanessa cleared her throat sharply, and Kendra retreated toward the kitchen. Elaine picked up the thread as soon as she left. "We've been thinking about how to help Sam, maybe set up trust funds for the kids. Real ones, for college travel experiences abroad. They deserve that." I folded my hands, steadying myself. "And what do you want in return?" Vanessa's tone turned soft again, too soft. "Nothing. Just a little structure. Maybe scheduled visits. At the restaurant or our home. Somewhere the kids feel comfortable. Until things settle." "Settle." "You've been through a lot," she said, voice dropping like she was delivering bad news gently. "We all think supervised visits might be best, at least until you're stable again." Marcus flinched. "Vanessa," she held up her hand, "it's not forever, just until we know you're okay." The table went silent. The kids were coloring on napkins, oblivious, but I saw what they were doing, building a wall brick by brick between me and the only pieces of Gloria I had left. For a long time I didn't speak. I just watched the candlelight dance across their polished silverware, their designer clothes, their smug certainty. And then I smiled, small, patient, the way a man does when he's already decided how this story's going to end. I reached for my water, took a slow sip, and said, "I appreciate your concern." Inside, though, something ancient and fierce began to wake up, the part of me Gloria always called the builder. "You can try to bury a man like me under your fancy words, but I've laid foundations deep enough to outlast earthquakes." And as Vanessa reached for her glass, satisfied she'd gotten the last word, I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. There's a kind of quiet that comes right before cruelty, the kind that sounds like kindness if you're not listening close enough. Vanessa folded her napkin, laid it neatly beside her plate, and looked at me like a lawyer about to begin cross-examination. "Sam," she said softly, "this next part isn't easy to say, but we need to be honest if we're ever going to move forward as a family." I'd been through worse hospital rooms, sleepless nights, bills taller than my hopes, but something in her tone made the hair on my arms stand up. Marcus shifted in his seat. "Vanessa, maybe this isn't," she cut him off with a sharp glance. "Marcus, please, let me speak." Elaine placed her phone upright on the table, camera facing me. "For legal reasons," she said with that polite smile again, "just so there's no misunderstanding later." My stomach turned. Vanessa leaned forward, lowering her voice so only our table could hear. "Sam, when Gloria got sick, we all admired your dedication. Truly. You did what you could, but sometimes love isn't enough." My hand tightened around my glass. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," she continued, pausing as if weighing each word, "that maybe if you had accepted help, financial help, Gloria might still be here." The sound in my ears went hollow like wind through a tunnel. Elaine nodded slowly. "We all offered to contribute, remember? But you refused. You said, 'I'll handle it myself.'" "I did handle it," I said. "Every bill, every treatment. Public hospital treatment, Vanessa interrupted, her voice still calm, almost sympathetic. Not the kind of care she could have had if you'd swallowed that pride and asked for real help. Across the table, Harold sighed dramatically. Men like you, he said, swirling his wine, always letting pride get in the way of responsibility. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. She deserved better, Sam, Vanessa said, shaking her head. A woman like Gloria, she should have had every option. Private specialists, experimental trials, anything to give her a real chance. But instead, she stopped letting the silence finish her sentence. Instead, Elaine said, picking it up, she died in a public ward while you were busy pretending everything was fine. Marcus slammed his hand down. That's enough, Vanessa turned to him, her tone suddenly sharp. No, Marcus, this is exactly what needs to be said. You've tiptoed around your father's mistakes long enough. Mistakes, I asked, my voice low and steady. You call taking care of my dying wife a mistake? Vanessa's eyes glinted like she'd finally drawn blood. I call it negligence born from pride. The table went still. Even the kids stopped coloring. Jaden looked up from his napkin, his little brow furrowed. Mom, what's negligence? Vanessa froze for half a beat, realizing too late she'd gone too far. Nothing, sweetheart. Eat your bread. But the damage was done. Amira reached for Marcus's hand.
Noah, only 5, turned to me, confusion clouding his small face. Did Grandpa hurt Grandma? That one cut deeper than anything else they'd said. I bent down, looking him right in the eye. No, buddy, I said softly. Grandpa loved Grandma more than anything in the whole world. He frowned. Then why are they saying mean things? Before I could answer, Vanessa sighed loudly, exasperated, because Noah, sometimes adults have to talk about hard things, things that little kids don't understand. Like blaming people who can't defend themselves, I asked quietly. Her head snapped toward me. Oh, please, don't make this about your feelings. We're talking about reality. You didn't have the money, Sam. You didn't ask for help. And because of that, Gloria suffered more than she had to. I could have shouted. I could have slammed the table, told them all exactly how wrong they were. But I didn't. Gloria hated shouting. She always said, let your silence weigh heavier than their words. So I sat there watching my son's wife twist my love into guilt. Elaine zoomed in the camera slightly. You see, she whispered to Harold, he's shutting down. That's what I meant by unstable. Marcus rubbed his temples. Mom, please stop recording. For documentation, she insisted, in case we have to involve family court later. My heart dropped. Family court, Vanessa didn't blink. Sam, don't act surprised. We've been patient, but we can't keep letting your emotional instability confuse the kids. They've already seen you cry at church, at the grocery store. I buried my wife, I said. Forgive me if I don't smile for your comfort. Harold snorted. Everyone buries someone. Life goes on. It's called being an adult. Easy to say, I muttered, when you've never had to dig the grave yourself. That made him bristle. He opened his mouth to snap back, but Vanessa raised a hand. Stop. This isn't helping. Dad, please. She turned to me again. Look, Sam, we're not trying to hurt you, but you have to face facts. You're 62, living alone in a rental, still doing manual labor, pretending everything's fine. The kids need stability, and we can't let your grief drag them down. Drag them down, I repeated, my voice quiet. Yes, she said, they pick up on your sadness, your desperation. It's not healthy. I looked around the table, the plates, the wine, the candlelight, and thought about how far Gloria and I had come from our first years in a one-bedroom apartment. Every memory we built together, every late night, every dream, all of it now reduced to a financial audit in designer clothes. The thing about being humiliated isn't the words themselves. It's realizing the people saying them believe they're right. Kendra appeared again, trying to refill water glasses, but her eyes flicked nervously toward the phone still recording.
She mouthed something I couldn't hear. Maybe I'm sorry, before slipping away again. Vanessa exhaled slowly, satisfied as if some ugly task had been completed. We're not your enemies, Sam. We're just doing what's best for the kids. You can visit, of course, but only under supervision until things improve. Maybe after you get some help, therapy, or whatever it is people your age do to cope. Harold nodded approvingly. Finally, some structure. Elaine ended the recording smiling like she'd just solved world peace. There, now it's official. For a moment I couldn't breathe. I could hear the laughter from other tables, forks against plates, a birthday song somewhere in the back. Life kept moving while mine stood still. They'd taken the worst thing that ever happened to me, losing Gloria, and turned it into evidence against me. I sat back, letting the burn of anger fade into something colder. There's a kind of pain that stops being pain and turns into purpose. That's when my phone buzzed again. I pulled it out beneath the table, shielding the screen. One message, 4 words. Time to open the folder. D.O. David Ortiz. The builder in me smiled. If they wanted truth, they were about to choke on it. The room had gone too quiet for a restaurant that full. Every sound, the soft clinking of glasses, the shuffle of servers, felt distant. I could hear my own heartbeat louder than the jazz drifting from the bar. Then the kitchen door swung open. It wasn't the usual rush of waitstaff carrying trays or the smell of seared steak rolling out. It was David Ortiz walking straight toward our table like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. He was dressed in the black uniform shirt of the Ember Lounge, sleeves rolled up to his forearms, but what caught my eye wasn't him. It was the old brown leather bag in his hand, the one Gloria used to carry our paperwork in, the one she never went anywhere without. For a second I forgot how to breathe. That bag hadn't left our home office in years. David stopped a few feet from the table, posture, straight eyes, calm. Vanessa frowned immediately. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sharp. "This is a private family conversation." He nodded politely.
Yes, ma'am. That's exactly why I'm here. Harold's eyebrows shot up. And you are, David turned his gaze to him,
Measured, steady. "David Ortiz, sir. I run this place." Elaine tilted her head. "The restaurant," he nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." "For Mr. Booker." It took them a few seconds to process what he'd just said. "For who?" Vanessa asked, her voice rising. "For Mr. Samuel Booker," David repeated. "The owner of the Ember Lounge and 6 other locations across Georgia." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through bone. Vanessa blinked, unsure if she'd heard correctly. "You mean—" "Yes, ma'am," David said, his tone respectful but firm. "This restaurant, this building, the land it sits on, it all belongs to Mr. Booker." Harold laughed once, that dismissive, uncomfortable kind of laugh rich men use when they're not in control. "That's ridiculous. This is one of the most expensive dining properties in Atlanta." David didn't flinch. "Yes, sir, it is." He turned toward me. "Mr. Booker, you asked me to bring this when your family was all together." He placed the brown leather bag gently on the table right next to Vanessa's untouched wine glass. The moment it touched the white linen, everything else in the room faded away. Vanessa looked at the bag like it might explode. "What is that?" David glanced at me. I gave him a small nod. He rested a calloused hand on the worn leather. "Mrs. Gloria Booker asked me to keep this safe. She said it should only be opened if Mr. Booker was ever doubted by those closest to him." Elaine's face drained of color. "You're telling us his dead wife gave you instructions?" "Yes, ma'am." "Handwritten, signed, and dated." Vanessa crossed her arms. "This is absurd. Sam, what's going on here? Did you put him up to this?" I shook my head slowly. "No, Vanessa. Gloria did." David unbuckled the clasp and pulled the flap open.
Inside were neat folders, each labeled in Gloria's handwriting: Education Trusts, Business Holdings Foundation, and one marked simply Family. The smell of that leather hit me like memory itself. Gloria's perfume, the faint hint of ink she used when she stayed up nights balancing ledgers while I worked construction bids. Vanessa leaned forward, eyes darting between David and me. "I don't understand."
What are these? David opened the top folder, glanced at the first page, and then addressed her directly. These are Mrs. Booker's personal records, he said. Bank statements, ownership documents, charitable accounts, property deeds, and he looked at me again. Letters. Letters, Harold repeated, his tone skeptical. Yes, sir, David said. Letters addressed to each member of this family. Elaine scoffed. Oh, please. What kind of stunt is this? Marcus finally found his voice. Mom, stop. Just let him speak. Vanessa turned toward him, eyes flashing.
Marcus, you can't seriously be buying into this. Your father, my father, he said quietly, hasn't said a word since we sat down. Maybe it's time we listened. That silenced her for a moment. David carefully lifted one of the folders and handed it to me. Mrs. Booker said this would explain everything. She also said, he paused, his voice softening, that she trusted me to make sure her words were heard exactly as she wrote them. The restaurant around us had grown unnervingly still. Diners pretended not to look, but every head was turned just slightly in our direction. Vanessa whispered, "This is insane." David straightened. "What's insane, ma'am, is questioning the integrity of the man who signs your dinner checks." Her mouth opened, then closed again. I could almost hear Gloria laughing somewhere, that warm, patient laugh of hers that used to fill a room. David turned back to the bag, pulling out an envelope sealed in wax. Across the front, written in Gloria's looping cursive, were the words, "To my family when the time comes." My throat tightened. I'd seen that envelope once before. Gloria showed it to me 2 weeks before she died. "You'll know when to open it, Sam," she'd said. "And if you can't, David will." And here he was. David looked around the table. Mrs. Gloria Booker had a message for her family, he said quietly, but every syllable carried weight. "And I think you'll want to hear this." The kids had gone silent. Even little Noah, who'd been fiddling with his crayons, was staring wide-eyed at the leather bag. Vanessa sat frozen, her confidence cracking just a little. Harold leaned back, face red. Elaine whispered something under her breath, but no one responded. David broke the seal, unfolded the letter inside, and looked at me. "With your permission, Mr. Booker," I nodded. My voice barely made it out. "Go ahead." He began to read. And in that moment, the whole room seemed to hold its breath. David unfolded the letter with the kind of care you give something sacred. The paper had yellowed at the edges, but Gloria's handwriting was as steady as I remembered, bold, confident, full of life. He glanced at me one last time, then began to read. "To my family. If you're hearing these words, it means I've gone, and it means my Sam has been questioned, maybe by people who don't understand the kind of man he is. So I need to make a few things clear. For 2 years, I watched this man hold our world together with his bare hands. He worked 18-hour days sometimes in the freezing cold, sometimes with barely any sleep, so that I could fight for one more sunrise. Every bill, every appointment, every treatment, he paid for it himself. Not with borrowed money, not with charity, but with sweat and sacrifice. When insurance ran dry, he sold 2 properties. When the medical debt rose, he built another wing on a hospital just to earn the contract money. He never missed a payment. Never missed a visit. Never missed a prayer. David paused, the words hanging heavy in the air. You could have heard a pin drop in that restaurant. Even the kitchen staff had gone still behind the swinging doors. He looked down again and continued. There were nights when I couldn't breathe without his hand on mine. He'd sit beside my bed reading the Psalms out loud, not because I asked him to, but because he believed words could build hope the way his hands built homes. And when I told him to stop working so hard, he smiled and said, "If I can build one more thing that lasts, maybe you'll still be here to see it." That's love. Not the kind you post about, not the kind you measure in money, but the kind that shows up every single day when the world stops being fair. Across the table, Marcus's eyes were filling. He pressed his palm to his mouth, trying to keep steady. Vanessa sat stiff, her back straight, her jaw tight. But I saw it, the first crack in her confidence. David's voice softened. "I know how this world works. People love a man when he's on top, when his clothes are pressed and his wallet's full, but they forget that real men are the ones who keep standing when the world's taken everything from them."
Sam Booker stood. He stood for me, for his son, for his workers, for every stranger who ever needed a hand. And if any of you ever doubt his worth, remember this: you're not questioning him. You're questioning the judgment of the woman who chose him. My throat closed up. Even now, 8 months gone, Gloria's voice still had that way of cutting straight to the truth, calm, certain, unflinching. A murmur spread across the restaurant. People at nearby tables were no longer pretending not to listen. They'd stopped eating, stopped whispering. They were just watching. David continued, his tone gaining strength. To the ones who think money defines a man, look closer. To the ones who think grief makes him weak, watch what he builds next. And to my grandchildren, if you're old enough to understand this, someday, know this: your grandfather didn't lose me because he couldn't afford to save me. He gave me more life than medicine ever could. He gave me peace. If love could have cured me, I'd still be right beside him. The sound of a quiet sob broke from somewhere behind us. Kendra, standing near the kitchen doors, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. Little Noah, who'd been silent since the letter began, turned toward me with tears streaking his cheeks. "Grandpa," he whispered, "you didn't hurt Grandma. You helped her." That was it. I couldn't hold it anymore. I reached for him, and he crawled right into my lap, wrapping his tiny arms around my neck. Vanessa's mascara was beginning to run, though she blinked hard, refusing to let the tears fall. Harold stared at the table, his hand frozen over his untouched wine. Elaine dabbed her eyes, pretending she had something in them.
Marcus leaned forward, elbows on the table, face buried in his hands. "Oh God," he whispered, voice cracking. "Mom." I didn't know. David read the closing lines. Gloria's goodbye, her legacy, her quiet fire. "Sam, if you ever hear this, promise me you'll remember who you are. You were never small. You were never broken. You were the foundation everything good in our lives was built on. I'll be watching, love. Make them remember you the way I always will." David lowered the paper slowly, his eyes glassy but steady. No one moved. The dining room was silent, except for the faint hum of the air vents and the clink of a wine glass somewhere far away. Vanessa was the first to speak, her voice barely audible. "I didn't know she wrote that." David folded the letter carefully, tucking it back into the envelope. "She wrote 3 copies," he said. "One for you, one for her husband, and one for me in case this day ever came." Elaine exhaled shakily.
She really thought David met her gaze. "Yes, ma'am, she did." He set the envelope down on the table and looked around the room. Mrs. Booker was a woman who planned ahead. She knew grief changes people, makes them forget who they're talking to. But she also knew something else. He turned to me, then to Marcus, then let his gaze fall on Vanessa. And Mrs. Booker left more than just words, he said, his voice dropping low, steady, almost electric. She left proof. The air shifted again, that same pressure before a storm. I could feel the entire restaurant holding its breath, waiting for what came next. And for the first time that night, Vanessa looked afraid. David placed Gloria's letter back into the leather bag and straightened his shoulders. His voice, steady but charged with purpose, carried farther than before. Mrs. Booker wanted her family to understand something beyond sentiment, he said. She wanted truth, proof, legacy. He opened another folder, thick-tabbed, stamped with legal seals. Mr. Booker didn't just build homes or restaurants. He built an empire. Booker Construction and Hospitality Group, founded in 1991, owns 11 restaurant properties including the Ember Lounge and employs 523 people across 3 states. The restaurant seemed to tilt with the weight of his words. His construction division, David continued, currently manages contracts totaling over $170 million, including the new Gloria Booker Cancer Care Wing at St. Thomas Medical Center. Scheduled completion 6 months from today. Every head in the room had turned. Servers froze mid-step. Diners put down their forks. Harold's mouth dropped open. Elaine looked like she'd swallowed ice. Vanessa just stared at me, pale, her voice barely a whisper. "That can't be true. He lives in a rental house." David smiled faintly. By choice, ma'am. His actual home sits in the Booker Trust portfolio. He leases it back to himself for $1 a year. Mrs. Booker set that up after the first business acquisition for tax reasons. Marcus turned to me, his face ashen. Dad, all this time, I didn't want it to change who you were, I said quietly. Or who I was. David flipped to another section. Booker Group also manages 2 philanthropic funds. The Booker Scholars Program has sponsored 72 students through college children of cancer patients who couldn't afford tuition. And the Gloria Booker Foundation provides free financial counseling to families in medical crisis. A low murmur rippled through the diners. Somewhere near the bar, someone whispered, "That's him." The construction guy who built the children's hospital wing. Harold cleared his throat, desperate to regain control. This is all very touching, he said stiffly, but it doesn't excuse. David turned a page. Actually, sir, you might want to hold that thought. He pulled out another document, older, with notarized signatures. Mrs. Booker left records about a financial incident involving you, Mr. Sterling. Harold's head jerked up. What incident? David's tone hardened. 3 years ago, you borrowed $1.2 million from First Colonial Bank, listing Booker Construction as a silent guarantor. The loan officer believed Mr. Booker had consented to the arrangement because your paperwork included forged emails bearing his name. Vanessa gasped. Dad. That's ridiculous, Harold snapped. I only use Sam's name as an informal reference. David raised an eyebrow. Informal references don't carry electronic signatures or bank routing attachments. He held up a legal affidavit. Mrs. Booker discovered this while reviewing corporate records. She chose not to prosecute, but she filed a sealed statement complete with notarized copies and metadata verification. Elaine's voice broke. Gloria knew. Yes, ma'am, David said. And she wanted her husband protected if those same people ever tried to question his character. The color drained from Harold's face. Vanessa's hand trembled as she reached for Marcus's arm, but he pulled away. Dad, you used his name to get a loan, Marcus asked, voice low, shaking. You could have ruined him. Harold tried to speak, but his words came out strangled. It was just business. David closed the folder gently. Then tonight's business is concluded. He walked toward the small stage near the bar and picked up the wireless microphone that the jazz singer had left behind. The restaurant lights dimmed slightly and every head turned toward him.
Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice amplified across the room. I'm sorry to interrupt your meals, but there's something you should know about the man sitting at table 7. Vanessa's eyes widened. David, don't, he continued unbothered. This man right here, Mr. Samuel Booker, isn't just a customer. He's the founder of Booker Construction and Hospitality Group. The company that built this restaurant owns this building and pays the salaries of over 500 people in this county. A stunned hush spread through the room. This man, David said, his voice rising, built the homes you live in, the schools your children attend, and the hospital wings that save your loved ones. He funds scholarships. He employs veterans. He paid for the medical care of dozens of his workers' families. And tonight, while some of his own kin tried to shame him, he sat quietly because humility doesn't need applause. Then David looked directly at Vanessa and her parents. But justice sometimes does. The room erupted not in gossip, but in applause. Diners stood up, some clapping slowly, others cheering. Kendra was crying openly now, whispering, God bless you, Mr. Booker. Marcus covered his face, shoulders, shaking not from shame this time, but something like pride breaking through the fog. I just sat there still. Gloria's letter was still on the table, her words echoing in my head. If you ever doubt this man's worth, Vanessa tried to speak over the noise. This is humiliating, she stammered. Are we being recorded? David turned toward her slowly, the microphone still in his hand. His voice dropped smooth and unshakable. Always, ma'am, he said, for security, and tonight for justice. The applause swelled louder, rolling through the restaurant like thunder, and for the first time since Gloria died, I lifted my head, looked around that room, and let myself breathe. The applause faded into a stunned quiet, the kind that lingers when people realize they've just witnessed something bigger than dinner drama. Harold sat rigid, jaw tight, eyes flicking around the room like a trapped animal. Elaine's mascara had bled into thin rivers down her cheeks. Vanessa looked small. The woman who'd walked into this restaurant ready to orchestrate my humiliation now sat staring at her trembling hands, every ounce of control slipping through her fingers. Then Kendra approached, not timidly this time, but with quiet composure. She laid a black leather bill folder in the center of the table. "Your check, sir," she said, her voice steady. Vanessa frowned. "Excuse me, what check?" Kendra opened it. Inside, the total gleamed under the soft light, $4,872.43. Elaine gasped. Harold barked out a laugh, brittle and nervous. "There must be some mistake. We're dining with the owner." David, still holding the microphone, turned toward them. "There's no mistake." He placed a small printed slip beside the bill, Gloria's own handwriting copied and laminated. "Anyone who questions my husband's integrity must pay their own debts. No exceptions." G. Booker, Vanessa's voice cracked. This isn't funny." David's tone was calm. "Mrs. Booker's instructions are very clear, ma'am. Tonight's expenses, as well as the past 6 unpaid reservations made under your family's account, are due immediately." Harold's face darkened. "That's outrageous. I have platinum status here." Kendra nodded politely. "Yes, sir, you did." David clasped his hands behind his back. "The account was deactivated an hour ago." The diners around us had gone silent again, eyes fixed on the spectacle. Someone whispered, "They're the ones who insulted the owner." Another murmured, "Serves them right." Harold pulled out his wallet, slapped down a gleaming black credit card, and glared at Kendra. "Run it." She took it quietly and walked to the register. Vanessa buried her face in her hands. Marcus sat frozen, caught between disbelief and shame. I said nothing. A minute later, Kendra returned, voice soft but steady. "I'm sorry, sir. Your card was declined." The color drained from Harold's face. "Run it again." She did. Same result. Elaine's hand trembled as she reached for her purse. "Try mine." 2 minutes later, hers was declined too. Whispers were turning into phones lifted discreetly, people recording. A couple at the bar mouthed, "Oh my God." David stepped forward, his expression neutral. Per Mrs. Booker's written order, anyone who questioned her husband's integrity must handle their own debt. No company account, no comped meals, no exceptions. Vanessa's shoulders started shaking. "David, please, this has gone far enough." He tilted his head. "Has it, because earlier tonight you accused a man of letting his wife die for lack of money? Now you're refusing to pay for your own meal." Harold slammed his fist on the table, making the glasses rattle. "You don't talk to me like that," Sir David said evenly. "I don't have to. Mrs. Booker already did." He set another sheet on the table, an email printed and signed, time-stamped 2 months before Gloria passed. "If the day comes when pride and cruelty try to disguise themselves as concern, remind them that true class isn't in the price of a meal, but in the way you treat someone who has less than you think you do. GB." Elaine started crying openly now, clutching a napkin to her face. "Please, let's just go. Not without settling the bill," David said softly. "Or you may leave your contact for legal follow-up." The room had become a courtroom without walls. Vanessa turned to Marcus, her voice breaking. "Marcus, please, help us." He stared at her, his wife, the woman who'd humiliated his father, the mother of his children, and something hardened in his eyes. "You didn't think we'd ever have to face consequences, did you, Marcus?" she whispered. "I didn't know." "You didn't want to know," he said. "That's worse." The sound of clicking phones filled the air, video after video, capturing the unraveling of the Price family. I finally spoke, my voice low but carrying. "David." He turned toward me immediately. "Let them be," I said. "They can choose what to do, pay or walk away. We don't need to shame them further." The whole room heard it, and for a moment I could feel Gloria beside me, proud calm, reminding me that dignity was the finest revenge. Vanessa looked at me, eyes red.
You'd still show us mercy after everything we said. Mercy's not for you, I said gently. It's for the kids. They'll remember how this ended. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Harold grabbed his jacket, muttering under his breath, "This isn't over." Elaine followed, eyes downcast. Vanessa stood last, turning to Marcus one final time. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For all of it." Marcus didn't answer. They left the restaurant in silence, heads low under the weight of 50 phones and 100 eyes. The door closed behind them. Then somewhere near the bar, someone whispered, "It's already online." Kendra glanced at her phone, her eyes going wide. "Mr. Booker," she said, "the video people are posting it. It's spreading fast." And just like that, before the night even ended, justice had found its way into the world, pixel by pixel, truth by truth. By sunrise, the story wasn't just a dinner table scandal, it was a wildfire. The first clip hit TikTok around midnight. Rich in-laws humiliate black grandfather. Then discover he owns the restaurant. Within 6 hours, it had 3.4 million views. By noon, CNN was running it under "the most satisfying justice you'll see this week." People dissected every frame, the expressions, the pauses, the tremor in Vanessa's voice when she realized who I was. Twitter threads called me America's grandpa. Memes popped up overnight, my quiet face at the table captioned "Grace under fire." Someone even used my line, "Mercy's not for you, it's for the kids," and printed it on t-shirts. The internet had made up its mind, the prices were villains, and I was the lesson. But behind the screens, real lives were collapsing. By Monday morning, Harold Price was trending not for his wealth, but for his fraud. Reporters dug up the forged loan paperwork that Gloria had locked away. The bank confirmed it was under review. The IRS quietly opened an inquiry into his financials. Elaine's charity board released a statement suspending her activities pending investigation. The high society crowd that once toasted with her at galas now treated her name like a curse. Vanessa was let go from her marketing firm within 48 hours. The company's HR email leaked online. "We cannot condone harassment, class-based discrimination, or defamatory conduct." Everywhere they went, people whispered. Marcus called me that Wednesday, his voice tight with disbelief. "Dad, it's everywhere," he said. "They're ruined." I was sitting on my porch, coffee in hand, watching the morning light crawl across Gloria's rose bushes, the ones she planted the year Marcus was born. "I didn't ruin them," I said quietly. "Truth did." He was silent for a long moment. "You're not angry, are you?" "Son," I said, "anger's what they wanted. That's how people like that stay powerful, by making you respond. But dignity." I took a slow sip of coffee. That's what they can't fight. The media storm didn't spare me, though. Producers called non-stop talk shows, podcasts, business magazines. "Mr. Booker, can we get your side of the story? Would you like to comment on your late wife's letter? Can we film you at the hospital wing you're building?" David handled the calls, his patience wearing thin. "No interviews," I told him. "No cameras. Just let the work speak." He nodded. "You sure the world's on your side right now?" "Gloria never built anything for attention," I said. "Neither will I." But the noise kept growing. Someone created a GoFundMe to support the Booker Foundation. It raised over $500,000 in 2 days' money. I redirected straight to cancer patient housing. News vans camped outside my company headquarters. Even our restaurants had lines wrapping around the block. Success was easy. Peace wasn't. I could handle fame, but not the hollowness that came with it. Not the flood of messages from strangers calling me hero when all I'd wanted was to keep my family from falling apart. On Thursday afternoon, David walked into my office, tablet in hand. "You'll want to hear this," he said. "What now?" I asked. He hesitated. "Vanessa called the restaurant." I looked up sharply. "She what?" "She asked for me directly. Said she wants to meet with you, not to argue, to apologize." I leaned back in my chair, letting the words settle. The image of her at that dinner table flickered in my mind, her voice dripping superiority, her eyes full of judgment, and now she wanted to talk. David's voice softened. She sounded broken, Sam, not performative, just tired. Said she hasn't slept since that night. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far off, summer storms brewing over Atlanta. Did she say what she wanted? I asked. He nodded.
She said she wants to tell you something Gloria once told her. Something she never understood until now. I stared at the rain starting to streak the window, remembering Gloria's last words to me. When people finally see their own reflection, Sam, don't gloat, just hand them the mirror. I took a slow breath. Set it up, I said, tomorrow evening.
The house. David looked at me for a moment, studying my face like he wanted to be sure. Then he nodded. You got it, boss. As he left the room, the storm outside broke into a full downpour, steady, cleansing, almost merciful. Tomorrow would bring something different. Not revenge, not victory, maybe something closer to forgiveness. The next evening, the house was quiet in that way old homes are, where the air hums with memory. Gloria's magnolia garden swayed outside the window, the blossoms just beginning to open after the rain. David had set up coffee in the kitchen, then left before she arrived. You sure you want to do this alone? He'd asked. I told him yes. Some things needed silence, not witnesses. At 6:07, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, Vanessa stood there, no makeup, no heels, no armor. Just a woman who'd been broken down by truth. Her eyes were swollen, her hair tied back like she hadn't bothered with appearances. Mr. Booker, she said softly, thank you for letting me come. Come in, I said, stepping aside. She hesitated, glancing around the house like it was a museum of things she'd once mocked. Her gaze lingered on the family photos, Gloria's laugh frozen mid-motion, Marcus's graduation picture, the 3 kids' handprints in plaster on the hallway wall. We sat at the old oak table Gloria and I had bought 30 years ago from a flea market. Vanessa looked small across from me, hands clasped in her lap. I don't know where to start, she said finally. Start with the truth, I said. She took a shaky breath. I was wrong, all of it. The dinner, the things I said, the things I believed. Her voice cracked. I told myself I was protecting the kids, that you were too sad, too unstable. But the truth is, I was protecting myself. I said nothing. My parents, they pushed me into that life, she continued, taught me that money meant safety, that appearances were everything. When Gloria died, I panicked. She was the glue, and I thought she stopped tears spilling over. I thought if I didn't take control, I'd lose Marcus too, lose our place in the world. I leaned forward slightly. And what did that control cost you? She swallowed. My integrity, my marriage, my children's trust. For a long moment, all I could hear was the ticking of the wall clock. The same one Gloria used to set 5 minutes fast because she hated being late for anything. Vanessa wiped her face. Mr. Booker, I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I just want to tell you I finally understand what I did, how small it was, how cruel. I let her words settle between us before I spoke. You know, Gloria used to say something about forgiveness. Vanessa looked up, eyes red. Forgiveness ain't for the guilty, I said quietly. It's for the living. Her lip trembled. What does that mean? It means forgiving you isn't about letting you off the hook, I said. It's about not carrying your sin in my pocket for the rest of my life. Vanessa nodded slowly. I don't deserve your grace. Maybe not, I said, but the kids do. They deserve a mother who learns from this. She covered her face, sobbing silently. Can I ever make it right? I reached into the leather folder David had brought earlier and slid a single document across the table. It was labeled Family Integrity Agreement. Gloria's handwriting curved along the top margin. Vanessa stared at it. What is this something? Gloria wrote before she passed, I said. She knew life could break people in strange ways. This was her way of setting boundaries for the family, for trust, for legacy. Vanessa hesitated, then began to read. If ever our family loses its way, if pride, greed, or fear tear at what we've built, let truth be the gate back home. But no one re-enters without rebuilding what they broke. Forgiveness must be earned through action, not apology. Trust must be rebuilt through humility, not words. If you seek to rejoin this family, you do it through love and service, not inheritance. Vanessa's hand shook as she signed the bottom. Does this mean? It means you can start over, I said, with Marcus. With your children, but not with the company. Gloria made that clear. The Booker Group isn't a safety net for anyone's pride. You'll stand on your own feet the same way we did. She nodded, tears falling onto the paper. That's fair. For the first time that night, I saw something real in her eyes. Not fear, not vanity, just exhaustion and understanding. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be the kind of person your wife would have forgiven, she whispered. I looked toward the window. Outside, the magnolia tree swayed in the soft wind, the petals catching the last gold light of dusk. Gloria had planted it the year Marcus was born. Said magnolias reminded her of resilience, strong roots, gentle flowers. I stood and walked to the window, watching the leaves shimmer. You'd be proud tonight, Glow, I murmured. You always said the right kind of justice leaves room for redemption. When I turned back, Vanessa was still seated at the table, eyes closed, hands on the signed paper as if it were an oath. For the first time since that terrible night at the Ember Lounge, the house felt lighter, like forgiveness had finally found its way home. Spring settled gently over Atlanta, the kind of warm breeze that made the magnolias dance like they were remembering something beautiful. The garden behind the house was alive again, bees buzzing, sunlight catching in the petals Gloria had planted decades ago. 3 small voices carried across the yard. Grandma Glow helped sick kids. Right little Noah asked, his knees dusty from playing in the soil. Marcus smiled. That's right, buddy. She helped a lot of them. Amira held up a tiny watering can, her curls bouncing in the sunlight. Then we're helping too, right? Because we're taking care of her flowers. I looked up from the porch, the same porch Gloria and I had painted together all those years ago. That's exactly how it starts, I said. One small thing at a time. Sophie, the oldest, ran toward the magnolia tree and pointed at the trunk where a bronze plaque now glimmered, the Gloria Booker Foundation, where healing grows. Grandpa, she said, her voice soft with pride. That's Mommy's name too. It sure is, I said, nodding toward the flowers. And it'll live here long after we're gone. Marcus joined me on the porch steps, handing me a cup of sweet tea, Gloria's recipe, extra lemon, not too much sugar. Dad, he said, his tone quiet, how do you build something that lasts? I took a slow sip, watching the kids chase each other through the sunlight. It ain't about the buildings, son, I said finally. It's about the hands you lift while you're building. He looked at me, nodding like he understood, really understood this time. Inside, the old house smelled like cinnamon and wood polish, the way it used to when Gloria baked on Sunday mornings. On the fridge, Vanessa's name was written on a calendar note: therapy sessions, parenting classes, scheduled visits. She'd kept her word. Every week she showed up quieter, humbler, learning what it meant to earn back trust instead of demanding it. She wasn't part of the company, but she was slowly becoming part of the family again. That was enough. Sometimes after the kids went home, I'd sit in Gloria's old chair by the window, looking out at the garden, thinking about everything we'd lost and everything we'd rebuilt. It wasn't revenge that had fixed us. It was truth, dignity, and the refusal to stop believing in people's better selves. A month later, I stood at the construction site of the new Gloria Booker Cancer Care Wing. The sun was bright, the smell of fresh concrete in the air. Workers paused as I picked up a smooth stone engraved with words Gloria had written herself years ago. For every heart broken, there's a way to rebuild with love, with dignity, with faith. I placed the stone into the foundation myself, pressing it deep into wet cement. Around me, dozens of workers, men and women who'd built half this city, bowed their heads for a moment of silence. When I straightened up, I looked at the skyline, cranes, steel beams, the sound of creation. Somewhere in that noise, I swear I heard Gloria's laugh, soft, proud, like she was telling me, "You did it right, Sam. You remembered what matters." That night back home, I sat on the porch again with the magnolia petals drifting in the wind. The stars above looked sharper than they had in years. I picked up my phone, opened the same social page where the world had once watched me fall apart, and typed a single post of "doesn't end when someone's gone. It just changes its shape. Sometimes it becomes a garden, a school, a hospital wing, or a story that helps someone else stand up again. If you've ever been broken by grief, by pride, by loss, tell me how you rebuilt. Someone out there needs to hear it." I hit post, then set the phone down. The kids were laughing somewhere down the hall, Marcus humming an old hymn as he tucked them in. The night was calm. My heart was full. And for the first time in a long time, I knew Gloria's legacy wasn't a building or a company. It was this quiet peace we'd built from the wreckage. "Sleep well, Glow," I whispered to the stars. "They're all gonna be all right." You know, folks keep asking me if I regret what happened that night. Truth is, I don't. Not one bit. See, revenge, it ain't about hurting people back. It's about standing up when they try to bury you and showing them you were the roots all along. Gloria used to say, dignity is quiet until it needs to speak. That night, I finally let it speak. So if you've ever been underestimated, disrespected, or written off because of your grief, your age, or your silence, remember this: you don't have to scream to prove your worth. Just keep building, keep loving, and one day, the truth will do the talking for you. If my story meant something to you, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. What's one thing they got wrong about you? Until you prove them otherwise.